Hey, it's me again. I haven't even changed. Literally, last video, now straight onto this one because I read like 5 books this week outside of Crossroads, which I'm also reading. Um, so I just need to record them all because when you take books out the library and you have like 10 books out the library, they're all going to be due at the same time. So I have to do quite a few reviews today. We're talking about Falling Awake by Oswald. I picked this up because I looked at the cover. I saw about 5 copies of this in the library, my local library, which was surprising. Like for some reason there were so many copies of this, and it was shortlisted for something called the Forward Prize. Um, Went backwards there, ironically. Um, and one of the single poems in this collection actually won Best Single Poetry for the Forward Prize 2016. This didn't win the actual complete poetry collection uh, award. And honestly, that's not the poem that I liked the most. I didn't like it too much. It was different from the others. I'm going to read you my favorite poem from this collection, but let's talk about it a bit first. So, Alice Oswald is a contemporary poet, as you can tell by 2016, and this is a poetry collection which has a lot of movement in it. Falling Awake is a great description for it. It's not the name of a poem in this collection, but it's still a great phrase that captures them all. There's quite a lot of movement in these poems, but there's not a lot of feeling. It's like nature poetry, but there's no person. It's hard to know what the perspective is, but The Falling Awake is a poetry collection with a lot of movement, a lot of interesting lyrical turns. It's wonderful to recite aloud, but it's none of these poems really last that long. They're falling awake. They fall away from you too. They don't stay because there's no persona in it. There's no perspective in it. It's like things are happening, but there's no opinion. There's no feeling. There's no collective message that I find in this. But the style of it is really cool. Like there's the way they're written, the way they're constructed is very interesting, and together it works as a great collection. But it's just if you like that personal edge to your poetry, you're going to find this a very cold read that kind of just leaves you kind of dry, leaves you feeling like you haven't had a personal moment. So here's my favorite poem. It's called Shadow. I'm going to flicker for a moment and tell you the tale of a shadow that falls at dusk out of the blue to the earth and turns left along the path to here, groggily under its blackout, being dragged along crippled over things as if broken winged, not yet continuous, no more than a shiver of something, with the flesh parachute of a human opening above it, but lengthening a little as it descends through the rings of 1 hour into the next with the rooks flying upwards, snipping at the clouds, until at last out of that opening here it lies, my own impersonal pronoun crumpled under me like a dead body. It is faint, it has been falling for a long time. Look when I walk, it's like a pair of scissors thrown at me by the sun, so that now as if my skin were not quite tucked in, I am cold, cold, trying to slide myself out of my own shade, but hour by hour more shade leaks out. Or if I stand, if I move one hand, I hear the hiss of flowers closing their eyelids, and the trees, as if dust was being beaten from a rug, shake out their buds and in again. It's as if I've interrupted something that was falling in a straight line from the eye of God. And if I do nothing, the ground gives up. The almost minty clarity of its grass begins to fade. The white moss under the leaves are amazed. And that's it. And I like that poem because it sticks close to a theme of a shadow, of describing the many ways we see a shadow, and you feel like this is a poem that talks from the view of the shadow. A lot of the other poems are talking about, for example, the breaking of dawn. So you hear it's like one thing happens and another thing happens. It's just scattered. This whole poetry collection is scattered, and that's its weakness. It's too scattered. And Shadow is one where I found a bit of unity to it, but still, we're not talking about the subject. We're talking about the object of the subject. We're talking about the shadow, and so it feels like it's not saying what it wants to say. It's talking around the subject of what it's describing all the time. And so you just, I've never felt so outside of what I wanted to read. But at the same time, it's not, it's very craftily made, and the way that it's written is very nicely. And a lot of things happen on the page, the way the lines are created. Um, I can see in the construction, it's very nice. I just wish there was some passion there. I don't think there's a single character in this entire book. And so it's very interesting from a techniques point of view if you're interested in writing poetry or you're interested in just reading poetry generally. It's quite it's quite unique and distinct in the way that it's written, the way it's constructed. And it'll give you some ideas in that realm. And as I think it works very well as spoken word as I read them when I was reading them. As I read one to you now, the rhyme, the way the rhyme works in these poems is very interesting, very nice, very natural sounding. And there is a lot of energy here and movement in these poems that most poetry fails to capture. And what makes most poetry boring. This isn't boring poetry. This is not boring poetry because a lot of things are happening. It's just cold. And so if you're looking for minimalist construction with a distinctive voice, then you should definitely pick this up. But that said, I find that this force is also found in poets which have a lot more passion. You know, I think of Anne Carson, I think of Anne Sexton having the same kind of movement in their poems, or they just have feeling that's just not here, and that feeling and that movement together is better than this. Um, for me, anyway. Unless you really don't like feeling, then you really like this. So if you want a cold fast read of some poems, then yeah, Alice Oswald's Falling Awake could be for you. But if you like to really feel expression for poetry, don't come here because this is cold. Falling Awake will leave you like you just not connect with it. Um, so if you want words that warm your heart, then give Falling Awake a miss. Happy reading.